Jake Morrison pushed through the crowded streets of Nexus Point Trading Station. The air smelled bad, like old fuel and sweat. Alien voices filled his ears as he walked past shops selling everything from weapons to strange food. He needed fuel for his ship, the Lucky Strike, and then he would be gone from this place. Jake did not like Nexus Point. It was the kind of place where bad people did bad things and no one asked questions, but it had cheap fuel and parts for his ship. As a smuggler, Jake had to save money where he could. He stopped at a fuel station and started filling his ship's tanks. The owner, a fat alien with 4 arms, counted Jake's credits twice before nodding. Jake was about to leave when he heard shouting from across the street. A group of tall, gray aliens were dragging someone in chains. Jake looked closer and saw it was a female alien with blue-silver skin. She was small compared to her captors, but she walked with her head high. Even in chains, she looked proud. The gray aliens were Vorthak slavers. Jake knew their type well. They bought and sold people, like they were things. The sight made Jake's stomach turn, but he told himself it was not his problem. He had his own troubles. Jake started to walk away, but something made him stop. The female alien looked up and their eyes met for a moment. Her eyes were bright purple and filled with pain, but also with anger. She was not broken. Not yet. Something about her reminded Jake of his sister back on Earth. The slavers dragged her into a dirty cantina called the Broken Chain. Jake knew what that place was. It was where slavers sold their goods to the highest bidder. Jake stood there for a long moment, fighting with himself. He should leave. He should mind his own business. But he could not get those purple eyes out of his head. Jake cursed under his breath and followed them into the cantina. Inside, the air was thick with smoke and the smell of cheap alcohol. Aliens of many types sat at tables, drinking and making deals. The slavers had pushed the female alien onto a small stage in the center of the room. A fat Vorthak slaver started calling out prices. "Look at this beauty," the slaver shouted, "fresh from the outer worlds. She is young and strong. Who will start the bidding?" Jake moved closer and got a better look at the prisoner. She had strange marks on her arms that looked like they were cut into her skin on purpose. Her clothes were torn but had once been fine. This was no ordinary slave. 50 credits, called out a voice from the crowd. 100, called another. Jake watched. The alien female. She stood straight despite her chains. Her eyes moved around the room, studying everything. She was looking for a way out, Jake realized. She was planning something. The bidding went higher. Jake knew he should leave, but something held him there. Maybe it was the way she refused to look afraid. Maybe it was because she reminded him of his sister. Or maybe it was just because Jake hated bullies, and slavers were the worst kind of bullies. When the bidding reached 500 credits, Jake made his choice. He pushed through the crowd and shouted, 1,000 credits! The room went quiet. The slaver grinned, showing yellow teeth. 1,000! Going once? Going twice? Wait, said a rough voice from the back. A huge alien with scars covering his face stood up. I will pay 1,500. Jake's heart sank. He did not have 1,500 credits. But then he noticed something. The female alien was looking at him with surprise and something that might have been hope. Jake thought fast. He pulled out his pistol and fired 3 shots into the ceiling. Everyone dove for cover as pieces of metal rained down. The station security is coming, Jake shouted. There's a raid. It was a lie, but it worked. Half the crowd ran for the exits. In the confusion, Jake grabbed the chain around the alien female's neck and pulled her toward the back door. The slavers tried to stop them, but Jake was ready. He punched the first one in the face and kicked the second one in the stomach. The female alien, despite her chains, kicked the third slaver in a place that made him fall down screaming. They ran through the back alleys of the station. Jake could hear the slavers shouting behind them, but they were getting farther away. Jake led the alien female to his ship, the Lucky Strike. Get in, Jake said, opening the cargo door. The alien female looked at him with those purple eyes. Why? She asked in broken standard language. Why help me? Jake was already starting the ship's engines. Because it was the right thing to do. As the Lucky Strike lifted off from Nexus Point, Jake looked at his passenger. She was sitting in the co-pilot seat, still in chains. Jake found some tools and broke the chains off her wrists. "Thank you," she said quietly. "My name is Zara." "Jake Morrison," he replied. "Where do you want to go?" Zara was quiet for a moment. Somewhere safe. Somewhere far from here. Jake nodded and set course for human space. As they flew away from Nexus Point, he wondered what he had gotten himself into. He had saved one alien female, but something told him this was just the beginning. Behind them, alarms were going off at the station. The slavers were angry, and Jake knew they would come looking for him. But when he looked at Zara, sitting free in his ship, he knew he had made the right choice. Sometimes doing the right thing was more important than staying safe. Jake just hoped they would both live long enough to reach human space. 3 days passed as the Lucky Strike flew through space toward human territory. Jake learned more about his passenger during this time. Zara was smart and knew things about starships that surprised him. She could read star charts and understand how the engines worked. This was strange for someone who was supposed to be a simple slave. Zara told Jake that bad people had taken her from her homeworld. She said her people were suffering under a cruel ruler. But she would not say much more about herself. Jake could tell she was hiding something important. On the 4th day, Jake's ship computer started beeping with warnings. 3 large ships were coming toward them fast. Jake looked at the scanner and his heart sank. They were Keth-Moran Empire warships, some of the most powerful vessels in the galaxy. "Zara, we have a problem," Jake said. "Big ships are coming, and they don't look friendly." Zara looked at the scanner and her face went pale. "They found me," she whispered. "Who found you? Who are you really?" Jake asked. Before Zara could answer, a voice came over the ship's radio. It spoke in the Keth-Moran language, which Jake did not understand. But Zara did. She listened and then started to shake. "They say we must stop our ship and prepare to be boarded," Zara said. "They say I'm a criminal who stole something from the Empire." "Did you?" Jake asked. Zara looked at him with those purple eyes. "Yes," she said quietly. "I stole my own life." Jake did not understand, but there was no time to ask more questions. The Keth-Moran ships were getting closer. Jake's little smuggling ship could not outrun them or fight them. He was about to surrender when Zara spoke up. "Jake, do you trust me?" she asked. "I guess I have to," Jake replied. "Then follow my directions exactly. Fly toward that asteroid field." Jake looked where she was pointing. The asteroid field was huge and dangerous. Big rocks floated everywhere, some as large as space stations. Most pilots would never try to fly through it. "That's crazy," Jake said. "We'll be smashed to pieces." "Trust me," Zara said. "I know these rocks. I used to play here as a child." Jake looked at her in surprise. How could she know this place? But the Keth-Moran ships were almost on them. He had to choose quickly. Jake turned the ship toward the asteroid field. Flying through the asteroids was like being in a nightmare. Huge rocks spun past them. Jake had to dodge and turn the ship every few seconds to avoid being crushed. But Zara guided him, telling him which way to go. She seemed to know exactly where every rock would be. The Keth-Moran ships followed them into the field, but they were too big and slow. One ship hit an asteroid and had to turn back. The other 2 kept chasing, but they could not catch the smaller, Lucky Strike. After an hour of dangerous flying, they reached the other side of the asteroid field. The Keth-Moran ships were far behind. Jake was breathing hard and his hands were shaking. "How did you know how to do that?" Jake asked. Zara was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Because this is my home system. Those asteroids were once my playground." Jake stared at her. "Your home system? But that means you're..." "Keth-Moran," Zara finished. "Yes, I am. And there is more you need to know." Before she could explain, Jake's radio crackled to life. A human voice spoke in English. "Unknown ship, this is Captain Lisa Hayes of the human vessel Defiance. We received your distress signal. Are you in need of help?" Jake had forgotten about the automatic distress signal his ship sent when the Kethmoran vessels appeared. He was never so happy to hear another human voice. "Captain Hayes, this is Jake Morrison. Yes, I need help. I have a passenger who is in danger from the Kethmoran Empire. Stand by, Jake. We're coming to you." An hour later, the human ship Defiance appeared. It was a military vessel, bigger than Jake's ship, but much smaller than the Kethmoran warships. Captain Hayes came aboard, the Lucky Strike with 2 of her officers. Captain Hayes was a woman in her 40s with short brown hair and smart eyes. She looked at Zara with interest. "So you're the one causing all this trouble," Captain Hayes said to Zara. Zara stood up straight and spoke in perfect English. "Captain Hayes, my name is Princess Zara Thel of the Kethmoran Empire. I am the rightful heir to the throne." Jake's mouth fell open. "You're a princess?" "Yes," Zara Thel said. "3 years ago, my father, the Emperor, died. My uncle, General Vextar, said I died in the same accident. But he lied. He had me captured and sold to slavers, to keep me from claiming the throne." Captain Hayes crossed her arms. "That's a serious claim. Do you have any proof?" Zarathel pulled up her sleeve and showed them the marks on her arm. They were not scars from torture, Jake realized. They were royal tattoos, marking her as a member of the imperial family. "General Vextar has been ruling the empire for 3 years, Zarathel continued, but he is not the legal emperor. I am the true heir." Captain Hayes looked troubled. "This puts us in a difficult position. The Human Colonial Alliance has been trying to make peace with the Kethmoran Empire. If we help you, it could start a war. If you don't help me, the galaxy will suffer under Vextar's rule," Zarathel said. "He is cruel and cares nothing for justice. My people cry out for freedom." Jake looked between the 2 women. "What does this mean for me?" "I just wanted to help someone who was in trouble." Captain Hayes smiled. "It means you've accidentally started a revolution, Jake Morrison." Just then, the ship's alarms went off. More Kethmoran vessels were approaching, but these ships were different. They flew the flags of noble houses loyal to the old emperor. "Those are my allies," Zarathel said with hope in her voice. "Some of the noble houses never believed I was dead. They have been waiting for proof that I survived." Captain Hayes made a decision. "I'm calling Admiral Kane Butler. This is bigger than one ship can handle." As messages flew between human and Kethmoran ships, Jake sat down heavily in his chair. A few days ago, he was just a smuggler trying to make a living. Now he was in the middle of a struggle for control of one of the galaxy's most powerful empires. But when he looked at Zarathel, standing tall and proud as she spoke with the loyal Kethmoran captains, Jake knew he had made the right choice. Sometimes the right thing to do was also the most dangerous thing to do. The real adventure was just beginning. Admiral Kane Butler arrived with a small fleet of human ships. He was an older man with gray hair and tired eyes, but his voice was strong when he spoke to the mixed group of humans and Kethmorans. "Princess Zara Thel," Admiral Butler said over the video link. "Your story is hard to believe, but the evidence seems real. The question is, what do we do now?" "I must reach the capital world of Cathara," Zarathel replied. "Only there can I present myself to the High Council of Houses and claim my throne." Admiral Butler looked worried. "General Vexitar controls most of the Imperial fleet. The journey to Cathara will be dangerous." "I know," Zarathel said, "but I must try. My people have suffered too long under his rule." Jake listened to the conversation and felt proud of the decision his leaders were making. They could have turned Zarathel over to Vextar to avoid trouble. Instead, they chose to help her because it was right. Dr. Nina Rodriguez, a human scientist who studied alien cultures, came aboard the Lucky Strike to learn about Kethmoran laws and customs. She wanted to make sure they did not accidentally break any rules that could hurt Zarathel's claim to the throne. "The Kethmoran Empire is very old," Dr. Rodriguez explained to Jake. "They have many traditions about how rulers are chosen. If we make a mistake, Vextar could say Zarathel is not fit to rule." Meanwhile, loyal Kethmoran ships joined their group. House Mordun, House Kethtel, and others sent vessels to escort the princess. But they had to move carefully. Vextar had spies everywhere. The journey to Kethura would take 2 weeks through normal space routes. But those routes were watched by Vextar's forces. They would have to take the long way through dangerous areas where few ships traveled. Jake found himself flying next to Commander Alex Turner, his old friend from the Earth military. Alex commanded a squadron of human fighter ships. "Jake, you really know how to find trouble," Alex said over the radio, laughing. "I didn't look for this," Jake replied. "It just happened." "That's what makes you special," Alex said. "You see someone who needs help, and you help them. Not everyone would do that." Their small fleet had been traveling for 3 days when the first attack came. Vextar's ships found them near a dead star system. 6 large Kethmoran warships appeared and demanded that Zarathel surrender. Admiral Butler gave the order to fight. The human ships were smaller and faster than the enemy vessels. Alex Turner's fighters zipped between the big ships like angry bees, hitting weak spots and then flying away before the enemy could respond. Jake watched from his ship as the battle raged. The human ships fought differently than the Kethmorans expected. Instead of standing and trading shots, they moved constantly, using speed and surprise. Captain Hayes led her ship Defiance in a daring attack on the enemy flagship. Her ship took heavy damage, but she managed to disable the larger vessel's main weapons. The battle lasted 2 hours. When it was over, 3 enemy ships were destroyed, and the others had fled. But the human fleet had taken damage too. "This is just the beginning," Admiral Butler said grimly. "Vextar will send more ships." Dr. Rodriguez had been studying Kethmoran communication systems. She came up with a plan to send messages throughout the Empire, telling people that Princess Zarathel was alive. "If we can get the word out, more worlds might rebel against Vextar," she explained. Zarathel agreed. She recorded a message in the Kethmoran language, explaining who she was and calling for justice. Human communication technology was better than what the Empire used, so they could send the message even when Vextar tried to block it. The message spread quickly through the galaxy. On world after world, Kethmorans heard their true princess speak. Some worlds declared independence from Vextar's rule. Others sent ships to join Zarathel's growing fleet. But Vextar fought back hard. He sent his best general, a cruel warrior named Drakmor, to hunt down the princess. Drakmor commanded a huge fleet of warships. The chase became a deadly game of hide-and-seek among the stars. Jake's knowledge of smuggling routes helped them avoid the main hunting fleets. They hid in asteroid fields, behind gas-giant planets, and in the shadows of dead worlds. At the mining world of Kethsol, they were almost caught. Drakmor's ship surrounded the planet while the human fleet was refueling. It looked like they were trapped. But the miners of Kethsol had heard Zarathel's message. When Drakmor demanded they hand over the princess, the miners refused. They used their mining ships to attack Drakmor's fleet, giving Zarathel time to escape. The miners' sacrifice was not in vain. Their rebellion inspired other worlds to rise up against Vextar. The Empire began to split apart as more and more systems joined the princess. During a quiet moment between battles, Jake found Zarathel standing alone on the observation deck of Admiral Butler's ship. She was looking out at the stars with sad eyes. "Are you all right?" Jake asked. "I think about all the people dying because of me," Zarathel said. "Maybe I should surrender. Maybe it would be better for everyone." Jake shook his head. "You didn't start this war. Vextar did when he stole your throne. You're just trying to fix what he broke." "Thank you, Jake Morrison," Zarathel said. "You saved more than just my life when you freed me from those slavers. You saved hope for my people." As they got closer to the capital world, the battles became bigger and more desperate. Vextar threw everything he had at them. Space filled with burning ships and brave souls who died for freedom. Commander Turner's fighter squadron took heavy losses protecting the main fleet. Alex himself was wounded when his ship was hit, but he kept flying. "We're almost there," Alex told Jake over the radio. His voice was weak but determined. "Kethara is just one more jump away." But as they prepared for the final jump to the capital system, Their scouts brought terrible news. Vextar had placed planet-killing weapons around Cathara. If he could not keep his throne, he would destroy the capital world and everyone on it rather than let Zarathel rule. 50 billion people lived on Cathara. If Vextar carried out his threat, it would be the greatest mass murder in galactic history. "We have to stop him," Zarathel said, her voice filled with determination. "No matter what it costs." Admiral Butler nodded grimly. "Then we go in fighting. All ships, prepare for the final battle." As the human and loyal Kethmaran fleets prepared to jump to Cathara, Jake checked his weapons one more time. The scared smuggler who had rescued a slave girl was gone. In his place was a man ready to fight for justice and freedom. The fate of the galaxy would be decided in the next few hours. The fleet jumped into the Cathara system and found a nightmare waiting for them. Hundreds of Vextar's ships surrounded the capital world like angry metal clouds. Massive weapon platforms floated in orbit, each one powerful enough to crack a planet in half. Admiral Butler stared at the enemy forces on his screen. "There are too many of them. This is going to be a slaughter." But Jake had an idea. "Admiral, what if we don't fight them head-on? What if we use human tactics?" "What do you mean?" Admiral Butler asked. "Humans are good at fighting when we're outnumbered," Jake explained. "We use tricks and misdirection. Make them think we're doing one thing while we do something else." Princess Zarathel joined the conversation. "The High Council of Houses is meeting in the Great Hall on Cathara. If I can reach them and present myself, they will have to recognize my claim. But first, we must stop those planet-killer weapons." Dr. Rodriguez had been studying the enemy positions. "The weapons are controlled from a space station called the Iron Fortress. If we can capture it, we can turn off the weapons." Admiral Butler thought for a moment. Then he smiled. "Jake's right. We'll give them a human-style surprise. Here's what we're going to do." The plan was crazy, but it might work. The main fleet would attack the outer edge of Vextar's forces, making a lot of noise and drawing attention. Meanwhile, small groups of stealth ships would sneak through the battle and head for different targets. Jake volunteered to take Princess Zarathel to the planet's surface. His ship was small and hard to detect. If anyone could get her through the enemy lines, it was him. Captain Hayes would lead an attack on the Iron Fortress with her damaged ship Defiance. It was a suicide mission, but she accepted it without question. Commander Turner and his remaining fighters would try to disable as many planet-killer weapons as possible, even if it meant sacrificing their lives. As the battle began, space around Cathara turned into chaos. Human ships darted between the larger Kethmoran vessels like fish swimming around sharks. Explosions lit up the darkness as ships on both sides were destroyed. Jake flew the Lucky Strike through the battle, dodging laser blasts and missile explosions. Zarathel sat beside him, her face calm despite the danger. "Are you scared?" Jake asked. "Yes," Zarathel admitted. "But fear is not the enemy. Giving up is the enemy." They reached the planet's atmosphere just as Captain Hayes began her attack on the Iron Fortress. Jake watched on his screen as the Defiance charged straight at the massive space station, taking heavy fire from all sides. "Hayes to all ships," Captain Hayes said over the radio. Her voice was steady even as her ship shook from explosions. "Tell my family I died doing what I believed in." The Defiance crashed into the Iron Fortress like a comet. The explosion was so bright that Jake had to look away. When the light faded, both the ship and the space station were gone. Captain Hayes and her crew had given their lives to save billions of people on the planet below. But their sacrifice worked. The planet-killer weapons shut down one by one as the Iron Fortress's control systems failed. Commander Turner's fighters pressed their attack on the remaining weapons. Alex's voice came over the radio, weak but determined. "This is for everyone who believes in freedom," Alex said as his damaged fighter dove toward the last planet-killer weapon. "Tell my kids their dad fought for something that mattered." Jake watched his old friend's ship disappear in a ball of fire as it destroyed the weapon. Tears ran down Jake's face, but he kept flying toward the planet. The Lucky Strike landed in the capital city of Cathara, just as the space battle reached its peak. The city was in chaos. Some people were celebrating because they had heard Princess Zarathel was alive. Others were hiding because they feared Vextar's revenge. Jake and Zarathel fought their way through the crowded streets toward the Great Hall where the High Council was meeting. Vextar's soldiers tried to stop them, but citizens of the city helped them hide and find safe paths. When they reached the Great Hall, they found it surrounded by Vextar's guards. But inside, the High Council was arguing about what to do. Some members wanted to surrender to Princess Zarathel. Others were too afraid of Vextar to act. Jake had one more trick up his sleeve. He contacted Dr. Rodriguez, who was still in orbit, with the human fleet. "Doctor, can you broadcast Princess Zarathel's voice to every communication device on the planet?" Jake asked. "I can try," Dr. Rodriguez replied. "Our communication technology is more advanced than theirs." Moments later, Zarathel's voice rang out across the entire planet. She spoke in the old language of her people, using words that had not been heard for generations. "My people," she said, "I am Princess Zarathel, daughter of Emperor Kethamor, rightful heir to the throne of our great empire. I call upon you to rise up against the tyrant who stole our future. I call upon you to remember who we used to be and who we can be again." Her words had power that went beyond politics. This was their true princess, speaking with the voice of their ancestors. Across the planet, people began to march toward the Great Hall. Even some of Vextar's own soldiers laid down their weapons and joined the crowds. They had sworn to protect the Empire, and they realized that meant protecting the rightful Empress. Inside the Great Hall, the High Council heard the roar of the crowd outside. They knew the people had made their choice. One by one, the Council members voted to recognize Princess Zarathel as the true Empress. But General Vextar was not finished. He appeared in the Great Hall with his personal guards, his face twisted with rage. "She is not the real princess," Vextar shouted. "She is an impostor sent by the humans to destroy our empire." "Uncle," Zarathel said sadly as she entered the hall with Jake beside her. "Why could you not be content with serving our people instead of ruling them?" Vextar pulled out a weapon. "I will not let you take what is mine." He fired at Zarathel, but Jake threw himself in front of the blast. The energy beam hit Jake in the shoulder, spinning him around and knocking him to the ground. Zarathel knelt beside Jake, checking his wound. It was painful, but not deadly. "You saved my life again," she said softly. "That's what friends do," Jake replied, trying to smile despite the pain. General Vextar raised his weapon to fire again, but his own guards stopped him. They had heard their true Empress speak, and they would not let him harm her anymore. "General." "Vextar," Zarathel said as she stood to face him, "I offer you exile instead of execution. Leave this place and never return. Your reign of terror is over." Vextar's face was full of hate, but he was outnumbered and defeated. As the guards led him away, he screamed threats and curses, but his words had no power anymore. The High Council officially proclaimed Princess Zarathel as Empress of the Kethmoran Empire. The crowds outside cheered so loudly that the sound could be heard in orbit, where the space battle was finally ending. Admiral Butler's voice came over Jake's communicator. "Jake, we've won. The enemy fleet is surrendering. Vextar's supporters are laying down their weapons." As Jake sat in the Great Hall, his wounded shoulder bandaged by a Kethmoran doctor, he watched the coronation ceremony. Empress Zarathel stood before her people, no longer the frightened slave he had rescued from Nexus Point. But as the celebration reached its peak, Zarathel surprised everyone with an announcement that would change the galaxy forever. "My people," she said, "we have been alone too long. We have feared other species and kept them at a distance. But today, humans fought and died beside us for freedom and justice. Today, I invite humanity to join our empire, not as subjects, but as equal partners, in building a better future for all." The crowd was silent for a moment, then erupted in cheers. Jake smiled even though his shoulder hurt. Somehow a simple act of kindness had led to this moment. He had freed a slave and gained a galaxy of friends. The war was over, but the real work was just beginning. 5 years had passed since the coronation of Empress Zarathel. Jake Morrison stood on the balcony of the human embassy on Cathara, watching the busy streets below. The capital city had changed greatly. Humans and Kethmarans walked side by side, working together and building a better future. Jake still could not believe he was an ambassador. He had tried to leave quietly after the coronation, but Empress Zarathel had other plans. She needed someone who would always tell her the truth, she said. Someone who saw her as a friend, not just a ruler. Ambassador Morrison, came a voice behind him. Jake turned to see Dr. Nina Rodriguez approaching. She now served as the head of interspecies relations for the Human Kethmaran Alliance. Just Jake, please, he said with a smile. You know, I don't like fancy titles. Dr. Rodriguez laughed. The Empress wants to see you. She says it's important. Jake made his way through the palace corridors. The walls were decorated with art from both human and Kethmoran cultures. Children from both species played together in the gardens, their laughter filling the air. He found Empress Zarathel in her private study, reading reports from across the galaxy. She looked up as he entered, and Jake was glad to see she still had the same bright purple eyes that had caught his attention all those years ago at Nexus Point. Jake, she said warmly. Thank you for coming. I have news that will interest you. Good news or bad news? Jake asked, settling into a comfortable chair. Good news, I think, Zarathel replied. 3 more star systems have asked to join our alliance. The Veltari Republic, the Zephyr colonies, and even the proud Asterian Empire want to be part of what we've built here. Jake smiled. That is good news. But why do you look worried? Zarathel set down her reports. Because success brings new challenges. Some of the older galactic powers are worried about our growing influence. They say we're changing too much, too fast. Change scares people, Jake said. But that doesn't mean it's wrong. I know. But sometimes I wonder if we're doing the right thing. Are we really making the galaxy better? Or are we just creating new problems? Jake looked out the window at the mixed crowds below. Remember what you told me once? Fear is not the enemy. Giving up is the enemy. Zarathel smiled. You always know what to say. A young Kethmaran aide entered the room. Your Majesty, Admiral Butler is here for the council meeting. Admiral Kane Butler had been promoted to Supreme Commander of Alliance Forces. His hair was completely gray now, but his eyes were still sharp. He entered with several other officers, both human and Kethmaran. Your Majesty, Ambassador Morrison, Admiral Butler said with a nod. We have the reports from the Outer Rim territories. The reports were mostly good. The Alliance had helped stop 3 wars, provided aid to disaster-stricken worlds, and established new trade routes that benefited everyone. But there were also challenges. The hegemony of Veldor is building up their military, Admiral Butler reported. They claim it's for defense, but our intelligence suggests they're planning something aggressive. What do they want? Zarathel asked. They want things to go back to the old ways, Admiral Butler explained. Big empires controlling smaller ones through fear and force. They see our alliance as a threat to their power. Jake had heard this before. Some species preferred the old system where the strong ruled the weak. The idea that different peoples could work together as equals frightened them. What are our options? Zarathel asked. We could build more ships, strengthen our defenses, Admiral Butler suggested. But that's the old way of thinking. Maybe there's a better solution. Dr. Rodriguez spoke up. What if we invite them to talks? Show them that joining us is better than fighting us? They won't listen to words, Admiral Butler said. They only understand strength. Jake had been quiet during the discussion, but now he had an idea. What if we show them a different kind of strength? Everyone looked at him. What do you mean? Zarathel asked. The hegemony controls the Terlos system, right? That's where they get most of their food. But Terlos has been having problems with space pirates attacking their supply ships. Admiral Butler nodded. That's correct. The hegemony hasn't been able to stop the attacks. So we help them, Jake said simply. We send Alliance ships to protect Terlos supply routes. Not to invade or threaten, just to help. Show them what we're really about. Dr. Rodriguez smiled. That's brilliant. We demonstrate our strength by using it to help others. not hurt them. But what if it's a trap? Admiral Butler asked. What if they attack our ships? Then we defend ourselves, Zarathel said. But we go in with peaceful intentions. Jake is right. We need to show them who we are, not just tell them. 2 weeks. Later, a small Alliance fleet led by the human ship Liberty and the Kethmaran vessel Honor Guard arrived at Terlos. The local authorities were confused at first. Why would the Alliance help a system that belonged to their enemies? Jake commanded the mission personally. When pirates attacked a convoy of food ships, Alliance fighters drove them off without destroying a single pirate vessel. Instead, they captured the pirates and turned them over to local authorities. The people of Terlos were amazed. For years, the hegemony had told them that humans and Kethmarans were dangerous conquerors. But these Alliance forces had risked their lives to protect Terlos citizens and asked for nothing in return. Word of the mission spread quickly through hegemony space. Other systems began to question what their leaders had told them about the Alliance. If these people were so dangerous, why were they helping? 3 months later, the hegemony government sent a message to Empress Zarathel. They wanted to discuss a peace treaty. You were right, Jake, Zarathel said as they prepared for the peace talks. Sometimes the best way to show strength is to show kindness. The peace talks led to something even better. The hegemony agreed to join the Alliance as an equal partner. Their military strength combined with Alliance technology and values created an even more powerful force for good in the galaxy. But Jake's greatest pride came from watching the children. On every Alliance world, young humans and aliens grew up together as friends. They learned each other's languages, shared each other's games, and dreamed of a future where species differences didn't matter. One day, Jake visited a school on the border world of New Haven. A human girl named Amy and a young Kethmaran named Theclon were working together on a science project. They were trying to design a new type of starship engine that would be faster and safer than anything built before. Ambassador Jake, Amy called out when she saw him. Come see what we made. Jake looked at their design and was impressed. These children working together had come up with ideas that experienced engineers had missed. This is very good work, Jake told them. You might change how we travel between the stars. We want to explore new worlds, Theclon said in careful English. Maybe find new friends among the stars. As Jake watched the children work together, he thought about that day at Nexus Point when he first saw Princess Zarathel in chains. He had no idea that helping one person would lead to all this. That evening, Jake met with Empress Zarathel for their regular weekly dinner. It was a tradition they had started years ago, a chance for old friends to talk without the pressure of politics. I got a message from Earth today, Jake told her. My sister wants to visit Kethara. She's curious about the alien princess her brother helped. Zarathel laughed. I would like to meet her. Anyone who raised Jake Morrison must be a remarkable person. She is, Jake agreed. She taught me that doing the right thing is more important than doing the easy thing. Is that why you saved me? Zarathel asked. Because your sister taught you to help people? Jake thought about it. Maybe. Or maybe I saved you because when I looked into your eyes, I saw someone who refused to give up hope, someone worth saving. And I saw someone willing to risk everything for a stranger, Zarathel replied. The galaxy is lucky to have humans like you. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, looking out at the city below. Ships from dozens of worlds flew overhead, carrying goods and people between the stars. The galaxy had become smaller, friendlier, and more hopeful. What do you think will happen next? Zarathel asked. Jake smiled. Whatever happens, we'll face it together. Humans, Kethmarans, and all our new friends. That's what the Alliance is really about, not being alone in the dark, The years passed, the Alliance continued to grow. More species joined, bringing their own strengths and ideas. There were still challenges, still conflicts to resolve, but they faced them as partners rather than enemies. Jake never stopped being amazed by how one small act of kindness had changed everything. He had freed a slave and helped birth a new, Age of Cooperation Among the Stars. The human embassy on Cathara became a symbol of this new age. Representatives from hundreds of worlds came there to learn about the alliance and how different species could work together. They all wanted to know the secret of human Kethmaran cooperation. Jake always gave them the same answer. Treat others the way you want to be treated. Help when you can. And never give up hope that tomorrow can be better than today. It was a simple philosophy, but it had changed the galaxy. And it all started with a human smuggler who saw someone in trouble and decided to help. Sometimes, Jake thought, the most important journeys began with a single step in the right direction. His step had led him from